Hi everyone, I'm Theo, and this is my basics, and that's my basics. That's my basics. As you can tell, I like the basics, so a lot of people kind of ask me a lot of questions about them. They're not that common. All three of these are in the Squier current production run. Squier Classic Vibe basics. I've done things like resprayed the green one, added some cool pickups to this one, custom pick guards and stuff. So the first question you're probably going to ask me is, what is it? Well, the clue's in the name. It's a Squier Base 6. It's a bass. More specifically, it's a short scale bass, 30-inch scale, tuned to E standard, an octave below a regular guitar. So it is a bass with 6 strings, with a really narrow string spacing here. Got a lot in common with the Fender Jaguar, which I'll get onto a bit later. You've got some controls for your pickups, on and off, feature 3 pickups, and a low cut switch. Volume tone, you've got a Fender offset Jaguar Jazzmaster tremolo and floating bridge. Got a little mute on this one. It's an odd one because the string spacing is so tight, you're probably going to have a hard time if you wanted to play it with your fingers. It's not impossible by any means, but it's a bit tougher. So generally I prefer to play it with a pick. The Jaguar pickups really seem to like effects. This one's got humbuckers on there. What I will do is compare this one to my other basics. So I've got all pickups on here. Let's just go to that neck pickup. So this one has just cosmetic upgrades, plus the stay trim bridge and the hardtail plate there. I'll get more into that later. And of course they love effects. So this is my Latent Lemon Audio Brassmaster. So another thing to factor in as well is that certainly with me, I find that the basics kind of has a very bright sort of sound. Now I think it's got 1 megaohm pots on here, which is similar to a Jazzmaster, which is partly why Jazzmaster has such a kind of bright sound. But what I feel is it's not a very bassy bass. It's got a kind of gnarly top heavy kind of sound. The so if you want something, you know, it's gonna be cool playing some like R&B and stuff, grab something else. I kind of find with short scale basses that they have a lot of low mids, but when it comes to that really deep fundamental, like kind of bottomless feeling, E string, it's like boom. I don't get that in general with short scale basses. Now your mileage may vary, but that's how I feel, and this is no different. It's a very kind of tight, compact sound that may not suit all things like it, but there are things I really love about it. One is its ability to kind of meld with effects. Another is the fact that I've got these extra strings, so I can do little bits there, which when the guitarist is doing something, we can both go up into this kind of area, make it more ambient. It just gives me so much more to work with, and aesthetically, I really like it. Yeah, I think if you haven't tried one out, get a chance to try one out, but there's a learning curve. As I mentioned, it doesn't have a lot of kind of bass to it, and at the moment in my opinion anyway, I'm running it through my Marshall. Got the emulated line out. Marshall Origin 50, love it. It's got a speaker sim line out, and I don't need the cab plugged in to run it, as long as the emulated line out going on. So it's basically the sound in here is of me playing this bass here and what's coming out of the speakers. But other than that, there's nothing coming out of the cab. Great, love it. There have been a lot of famous players of the Basics. I mean, it actually predates the Jaguar, so you can probably looking at it going, oh, there's some bits and pieces in common there. There are. It actually predates the Jaguar by, I think, a year. And the year after the Jaguar's release, it moved from having sort of Strat-style pickups to getting the Jaguar-style pickups that are now on Basics. But it's been used by like Glenn Campbell, The Cure, Joy Division, New Order, Dwayne Eddy, Jet Harris, Loathe. Everyone's talking about Loathe at the moment. Yeah, same thing. So what I'll do is in the comments, I'll put a link to a Reddit post by someone called Moon Rabbit, which have done a great list of songs that have a lot of Basics in them. So yeah, I hope you enjoy my video. It's going to be probably the longest video I've ever done. So here you've got one of my Basics here. I made a few upgrades to it, but largely kind of cosmetic, I guess. The switching, the pickups are all still stock. What I have done, however, is change the knobs. Got a gold anodized pickguard from Jaguar in Australia. I painted the headstock white to match the body. It's actually a vintage modified Squier Basics. Cheeky little Fender logo there. As you will notice, the upgrades I've actually made to this in terms of performance enhancing is I got rid of the tremolo and put one of these hardtail plates. Now, there are a few people, Herad, that guy I mentioned, did me a gold one, which I've put on my green Basics, and this one came off the Jaguar, which I'll show you shortly. The tremolo is a really tough one on the Basics because I don't really know anyone who uses it, and it's just another thing to kind of get in the way of your tuning stability and such. A lot of people always say, look, you know, with these floating trem systems, it's if you set it up properly, it's not a problem. But if, like me, you're predominantly a bass player and you pick up Basics for the first time, you're not necessarily going to know that. So this hardtail plate is great. I've got it with a high break angle, so some of you can get the holes are down here. You still got the length there, so you can do the cool little sounds. But I found with that higher break angle, one of the issues you can have with the Basics is that the strings tend to pop out of the saddles. Now, two ways about going around that is change the break angle with something like a buzz stop. Here you go, this is the buzz stop. So if the strings were, if this was a regular tremolo, you could fit it kind of there, or however it's meant to go, and it pulls down the strings after the bridge, creating a steeper break angle at the bridge, meaning there's more downward pressure and the strings won't pop out. Also as well, you might find there's a lot of kind of ghost notes and kind of weird harmonics that come off when you play here, because these strings, especially when they're at full length, are still quite resonant. So obviously using the buzz top can help that, as can using the steeper break angle there. So that's been invaluable to me. One of these on, as I mentioned, gold one on my green bass 6, and on my white one here, one of these. I'm going to upgrade the stock. I'm going to swap this to my black bass 6, and I'm going to put a Fender American Vintage tremolo in here. Probably won't go up for the mastery because that's more than I want to spend. And this is probably going to live its life as a baritone tuned up to B or something. Okay, so I've got this stay trem bridge here. The reasons for upgrading off the standard one is as follows. When this was a vintage modified bass 6, it would have had something along the lines of this kind of bridge, which is your normal Jaguar Jazzmaster sort of bridge with the individual saddle adjustment height, so you can change the intonation, the radius, and obviously just the intonation as normal floating bridge with these screws. What I found is, partly due to the break angle and partly because I don't think that the groove is deep enough on these, the strings, especially this string, can kind of pop out when you play really hard. So the stay trem, also what I found actually, is that the bridge could sink into the body because the screws would kind of work their way free and sink in as you're playing. Stay trem's built, I would say, a lot more solidly. Nice big grooves there. The bass 6 bridge is actually extra wide. Deal with the fact that you may want to get the strings further down for intonation. Now, I don't necessarily, but it's there as an option. So I think it's a really great upgrade. I think it costs like £75 for one of these. And obviously mastery stuff is a lot more expensive. So I'd say that's your first level of upgrade. It's pretty solid. What I also tend to do is I tend to wrap the posts in tape. So if I'm going hardtail with the bridge, not wanting any movement there. I'm also not wanting, with the trem plate, I'm not wanting any movement with the bridge either, because the whole idea is there's no point for it to move. I'm not using a tremolo. So I usually wrap these in electrical tape. So with the traditional sort of tremolo system for the Fender offsets, it's a floating bridge which moves as the tremolo moves the strings. So if you don't want that to move, wrap the legs up with electrical tape, pop back in the thimble so it's tight, and then set it up again. So here's another one of my bass 6s. I did a few bits to it. It was already black. I painted the headstock black. Cheeky Fender logo again. Lots of stickers on this one. I quite like. I've been getting into putting stickers on my guitars. Don't usually. Now you can see there. I've got these black lightning bolt vinyl stickers, and then the yellow one here. What I've done, I really actually love the way the Fender tremolo looks on the bass 6, and I think that when you go for the hardtail plate, it kind of takes away from that look and starts to look a bit minimal and sparse. So what I've actually done, this is a jazz bass bridge cover, ashtray as it's known. I think it does a good job and kind of looks quite well in proportion. I wouldn't necessarily say it's perfect, but it's quite well in proportion and covers up just the bareness of the bridge plate there. So I had a custom pick guard made by Tiny Tone. So I know they're on Instagram, so go find them. I asked them to make it out of black anodized aluminium, so it's kind of matte finish there. I found these Fender wide range humbuckers, probably off, I think it was a Vintera Telecaster Deluxe. Found them on Reverb. Got the pick guard made, so I had to get a template for that. It confused the hell out of me. Few other bits and pieces I've done to this as well. So you got the wide range humbuckers. I'll let you know how that sounds in a minute. I've got another stay trem bridge here, but because I wanted the Fender mute to get the hole drilled in the body, but the wider bass 6 bridge will not fit if you want the mute on as well. I also drilled the hole in the body too deep for the mute, so there's not enough tension on the spring that's in the hole to keep this up, so it falls down really easily. There's like no pressure on there. I'm going to get that fixed. Just trying to think what else I did with this. Yeah, it's got my little, don't know if you see that, my little Sandman neck plate, because, well, I love the Sandman comic. I got Death one too on, I think, my Jaguar. I'm hoping you can see this here as well. It's my green one, share with green nitro. I refinished it. Originally it's had the gold pickguard on, it looked great, but actually I think it looks better with the black pickguard on, and still got the gold hardware from Herod. There's one of those I mentioned, one of these hardtail plates under there as well. Again, stage frame bridge, and that pretty much stuck. I got some gold Clusons on here. Cluson. I'm going to go with Cluson. Yeah, cheeky, an actual Fender Basics decal here. So when it comes to talking about what you should do, it's really up to you, but I think the key thing you will notice when you buy a normal Bass 6 is kind of how floppy the strings feel, especially the E and the A, but the E is the one you'll notice the most. It's super floppy. That is because they're given a stock, I don't know if they're the Darios or the Fender Bass 6 sets. They do two sets, but like a stock is a 0.8084, 84, which my general rule of thumb is if you're playing short scale bass, which this is, you'd want to go up a gauge, I guess, from the tension from the ones you'd have on a long scale bass. The reason is I find that with short scale basses the tension of the strings is lower, so you get floppier strings. So if you usually sound a precision or a jazz, you go with medium gauge strings. On a short scale, go with heavy gauge. This is the case here. I count 90 gauge strings as light gauge strings on a long scale bass. This is 84, so that's just, I mean, that's baritone guitar territory for me. Like, really happy with an 84. If I'm going to tune this up to like G or something, fine. But really, I don't want anything less than like 95. Now, what's weird is Fender actually do a set of Bass 6 strings, which are 100 to 24, which are basically, for me, perfect. Maybe could go a little heavier, but you get into a point where you get string gauge. I've done this before. I've ordered got a custom made gauge of strings that are in fact so heavy that I think it was actually warping the neck a little bit. So those Fender standard gauges, you want 100 on there. La Bella do a flat one set which has, I believe it's 95 flat one strings. And they're pretty good as well. I think the tension's a bit higher on those flats. think this is actually my baby. I think this is the first one. I've never done a great refinish on our body before. It's the first time I did all the gloss and everything. And I think it turned out the best. I love all of them, but this one's going to stay as a base 6. This is the main base I use for when I do my like Betazoid stuff. You've seen me sharing in my Betazoids music. This is the base I do that on. I can do it on any of them. But yeah, the plan is this one's going to go up to B at a baritone, maybe A, and get a tremolo. This is going to stay base 6. And the black one is going to have the hardtail trem plate on it, and it's going to get flat wound strings. And then the mute is also going to make sense. You like tic-tac bass. Yeah, more old school kind of Motowny sounds, I guess. Do whatever I want with it. So here's my green bass 6 tuned to E standard. As you'll notice, chords can sound muddy if you play them quite low. So I just want to explain my little signal chain I've put together for this. I've got my Wonder Effects Fuzzhausen. Donovan Danhausen is a really cool wrestler I'm into. And Wonder Effects made this kind of signature pedal. It's really wacky. It's got no external controls other than a foot switch for on and off, and another foot switch to go into a weird oscillation mode. I'll show you that happens in a bit. Polytube Mini. Really cheap Mosky chorus pedal. Another Mosky is a clone of the Tech 21 Blonde. So it's kind of Fender amp modeling. Cab sim in there, so super cheap. Basically the same as the Joyo American sound, but this is smaller. And so yeah, great option for me. I will get a Tech 21 Blonde though at some point because, hey, this is a great pedal. So can't really go wrong with getting the Tech 21. And the Tremolo, reverb from Fender. Yeah, I'm just gonna, let's get some sounds. Let's first try something like old school. So the controls you got here, you got your volume, your tone, pickup switches on and off for each of the pickups, and a low cut switch. So let me just, so it's just neck pickup on. Let's just let you hear how all the pickups sound. So all of the pickups. My favourite is basically usually the neck pickup. If I'm playing it as an actual bass, it's got a really kind of gritty sound to it. Or neck and middle pickup. Sometimes I find that it's got a kind of phase cancellation which scoops the mids a little bit, which can sound nice, but you still want to have a big tone. You don't want to get in the way too much of the guitarist. So let's get that Fender sound. And let's go for like a tic-tac sort of sound. So let's maybe get that bridge pickup on. And let's cut the bass. So what I've got here is a low cut on and just the bridge pickup on. I've got my Fender sounding preamp there and some spring reverb. Look at this, try something out, maybe a bit like, there's some kind of 80s goth vibes in there. Okay, let's just go wild, maybe with a bit of fuzz. So here I've got one of my bass 6s and my Squier Classic Vibe Jaguar. The Jaguar has been modified. I've got a Fender American Vintage trem on there. The switches here have been removed with the simple pickup selector. What I wanted to show to you is basically how similar the Jaguar and the bass 6 are. They've got the same pickups. Bass 6's got 3. On a regular Jaguar, you've got an on-off switch for each of the 2 pickups, as well as a third switch, which I think either engages a mid-cut or a low-cut like it does on the bass 6. On the bass 6, you've got the 3 pickup on-off switches and the low-cut there. You've got no rhythm circuit on the bass 6, so actually it's a bit simpler. But again, you've got the same sort of bridge, floating bridge, tremolo combination. They're pretty similar, to be honest with you. What's interesting as well is that the Jaguar is kind of a short scale guitar. I mean, it's shorter scale than, say, a Strat, Tele, Jazzmaster. And the bass 6 is a short scale bass. It's 30-inch scale, so usual regular length is 34. So yeah, it's kind of the short scale of that as well. There's a lot in common between the two. I think they pair really well together. I think if you like Jaguars, you're gonna kind of like the bass 6. Now, what's interesting as well is with the bass 6, because it is 30-inch scale, and at 30-inch scale, you're down to E, which makes it a bass. If you tune it up, like I sometimes like tuning this up to B and using it as a baritone, and then some of the stuff becomes even more useful, like the low cut on bass. Sure, it's good if you're doing the kind of tic-tac sound where you're palm muting and mirroring, playing in unison with a bass guitar or double bass, but generally you're not going to have too much use for it, I think. Where it is useful though is if you've tuned this up as a baritone, you might not want all that excessive low end, considering that you've also gonna have a bass guitar in there as well. So the low cut then becomes really useful. Also, as a bass, I don't often use the tremolo, hence me getting rid of it on most of my bass 6s. However, as a baritone, I do use the tremolo. Obviously, it's got that kind of nice twangy sound that you might want for like surf rock or something like that. So yeah, that's a little comparison between the two, really. Very similar structurally. Yeah.